Hey guys, welcome back. We got the app looking pretty cool now, I would say. Um, we got a request coming back from Google. Right now it's for a hard-coded address. So let's go swap that up. What we're gonna do first, which I'm curious about, so I see in their address they have a lot of they have a plus separating each space, and I don't know if we're gonna have to do that. So what I'm gonna do to find that out is just test it. And by the way, I was looking at it, so you get 2,500 free requests per day, which is pretty great. 50 requests per second, and then 50 cents for every additional 1,000 requests. That's pretty cheap to use, even if you're using it for your actual app. But I mean, these things add up, something to look at. But for the purposes of this app, great tool. This is what I've used before. This is probably what I recommend using in general. You saw how easy it was. We got an API key. There was a pretty standard URL to use, easy to understand, and then because you already know how to use Alamo Fire, you can get back the information like super quickly. So, all right. So what I want to do is go to Maps and just like. Pick somewhere random. This is Los Angeles, where I live. So I want to pick somewhere random. Okay, not like that. I want to pick like. There you go. If you drop a pin, you'll get a zip code. Here, let's do this. Let's do the Starbucks. If we do right next to it. All right. So I want to get this address. So if we copy this address. Copy address. I want to paste it in here and see if it'll just take it like this. Don't take out that ampersand, the and right there at the end. Not with spaces. I'm pretty sure with spaces it won't work, but actually we can try it with spaces after too. So I'm just gonna hit play, see what we get back for this, and then we should try it with spaces, because if we don't have to remove the spaces from the string, then that's great. Build succeeded. It's going to pop us to the app screen. And then we'll get back and we'll see if the latitude, longitude is similar, close enough. So it looks like it got a location. And then 34.187, negative 118.553. Just like click right next to it. Yeah, 34.187, negative 118.553. Yeah, so that shows that we don't have to have the pluses in there. Now we can find out if we can have spaces. That I'm really curious about. In general, I like to find out what happens in these little edge cases, is what they're called, before I move on to actually coding it. You can do it the opposite way. I mean, you can just, I don't want to set it up, I don't want to over programming it, I don't want to over engineer it, I don't want to like take out spaces, add pluses, whatever, unless I absolutely need to. So that response obviously was no good. So we didn't print anything out, which means one of these failed. And if I remember right, then there's like a response, results dot. I don't remember exactly how do you get if it was successful or not. Response dot success. Response dot response. Successful. Let's look this up real quick while we're here. GitHub Alamo Fire. I know something comes back when you make a request for Alamo Fire that says whether it was successful or not. I don't remember exactly what it was. But we're gonna go ahead and find out and remember together. Response results. Response.results. see what the options are. Result. Yeah, but what are the possible results? Let's see if there's somewhere simple that it says what are some possible errors. And I know there's just a few that comes back like success or not. I can also say if we don't get a response back, then obviously there is an issue, but that's a little, I don't know, that's not as clear. If response.error equals nil. Okay. So if there was an error, then there will be, okay, let's say else if let error equals response, not error, print error. So let's see if this has like a, there you go, localized description. That means localized, meaning it'll be in whatever language you're in, which is English. It'll print back an error. So let's play it one more time and see what the error was. Sometimes these are helpful, sometimes not. Depends on how well the API is designed and set up. Build succeeded. We're obviously not going to get a response back. If we don't get a response back, I assume there was an error. The URL is not valid. That's a perfectly fair response. It's obvious that you can't have spaces in the URL just like you can when you actually put in the URL. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to get an address. So we're going to say address, of which is a type string, as a parameter to get location from address. And then what we're also going to do is return a parameter, which I'm going to say success. And that's going to be a bool. So this little line in front of, so this is the name of the variable that we're going to pass back, success. This is the type, which is a bool, which is true or false. And then this little line in front in Swift means that you don't have to include this when you call completion. So here I would print it out, I guess. Eventually we'll just like return the actual error message. So I'll say completion false. And if you see there, when I say completion, it expects a parameter, which is a bool, but it doesn't, I don't have to put in a parameter name. So I'll just say false for now. And here I'll say completion is true. And then instead of throwing this address in here, I'll say, okay, let's do this. This will be like our key, and then our address will be this essentially. Call this the base, call it what it's actually usually called, base URL, and then var request, let request equals base URL. There's a few ways we could do this, but I'm gonna do it like this. I'm gonna say base URL, and then the address that we get passed in, and then what we need is this last bit, just this. So we're gonna need that ampersand key and then our key. So that'll be fine, except that our address still has spaces in it. Let's see where my mistake is. Nope. Perfect as usual. I'm just kidding. Address dot. I need to remove spaces, and let's see if I remember a simple way. Remove subrange, replace subrange. Here. Replace spaces in string Swift 4. Nothing wrong with remembering stuff like this, or not remembering stuff like this. It's little things that you look up over and over, or at least I do. It's kind of an old answer. Here, this Hacking with Swift is generally a good website that I'd recommend. String, trimming characters, white spaces and new lines. It can't be that, I mean, it could be that easy, I guess. Oh no, this actually trims the edges. I wonder if this might work. I don't think it's gonna work exactly, but because that looked like it took off the edge white spaces and stuff. Okay, yeah, so this is saying it returns the ends trimmed. What we want is replacing occurrences of space in URL. String by replacing occurrences of string. Swift. String by replacing percent Swift 4. This is what we're looking for. Adding percent encoding with allowed characters. This might be cool. It only allows characters that are allowed in a URL. Okay, I can dig it. Let trimmed string equals that. Trimmed address. Camel case it. Trimmed address. Like that. Looking good. And then to test it out, I'm going to go back to view controller here, which is going to be giving me an error now, which it hasn't yet, but it will. Base URL. Use of unresolved identifier base URL. Should not be an issue. What is exactly the problem here? Did you mean base URL? Yeah, I spelled it wrong. Whoopsie. This should give an error, which it hasn't yet, but if I type it again, you'll see that it's expecting an address. And if you realize in this one, I didn't put that little dash in front because I want to specify that the parameter should actually be included when you call it. So that's the difference between putting the line there. So let's try that same Starbucks address, if I can find it. Let's find that same Starbucks address, or actually it should still be copied. No, I just copied something else. That's our Starbucks. So this is, a little bit time consuming, but it's usually worth it to save yourself a little bit of headache at it later by just throwing in some tests first. At least that's how I've always found to do it. And so now this returns a bool, which you can name as success, and then you can say like, if success, then do something, otherwise do something else. But for now, we just want to see if it works. We'll see if it works based on what this prints out. You hit the trash to clear it. See if it builds. And it should be fine. You can't really ever say for sure, you know? But this is how you learn. This is how I learn everything. I have my bachelor's, gone to school. The most I've learned is from trying things, them not working, and then having to fix them. And I've heard of similar experiences. URL is not valid. So it looks like it added %20, which is generally used for white space in addresses. In like URLs. And it says it's invalid because it returned an optional. So it looks like, which I didn't look up, this trimmed address, this address adding % encoding is not, it doesn't return always. It returns a string optional. That's that question mark that I mentioned before. I think I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna wrap this. If it can't be returned at all, that means something is definitely wrong with it. And I'm just gonna throw that inside. And if it doesn't return anything, then I'll do a completion and say false. And then while we're in here, let's just do this success, and then I'm gonna say error message, and I'm gonna give this optional value of string. So this is why this is useful. So now when I say completion and false, I can say invalid URL. I can pass in the string, and in the case that this is true, I can put the second parameter as no, so I don't have to put like a bogus string in. And here I can actually just send back this localized description. And then what I do back here is, now if it's successful, otherwise if let error message, this is gonna have another parameter, so you can say error. Let error message equals error. For now we'll just print the error message, but later we're gonna put up like a little pop-up. We're gonna put up a little pop-up that they can acknowledge to say try again, and it'll display that information as needed. It's loading up now. Cool. There we go. We got our address back. So it looks like spaces aren't allowed, but if you put the right URL format, which is %20, you can get it back. So now the last thing we have to do is put this in here. So we'll do, when we hit enter, search pressed, do this. What we'll pass in is this location entry.text. Since we already checked that it's not empty, I'll just unwrap it myself, not worrying that it's an optional. If it's successful, what we need to do is get back a latitude and longitude from here, and then basically make a request that way. So right now we're adding our latitude, longitude in this way. We're gonna need to pass in, I'll explain what it is in a second. Coordinates, it's gonna be a CL location coordinate 2D or something. I believe that's what it's called. It's a type that the maps and stuff use to have like latitude and longitude. If I spelled it right, we'll find out right now. Might be because we don't have this here. Core location. Yeah, that it is. Say location coordinate 2D. That'll work. And then what we're gonna do is say coordinates, latitude, and then coordinates, longitude. So that's just something I knew. If you had to look it up, you'd just say, you could do it a lot of ways. You could pass in two string variables that one's latitude, one's longitude. I know that this exists, so I can just like create that one thing by itself. I can also create like a tuple that it expects as a parameter, but that'd be a little weird because I'd have to make like a separate thing to hold it. So that's what I'm going to be using. And if we go back to location, so we can either call it from here, but since we already kind of have it set up in here, we'll say if it's successful, let's look at what we got back here. We're gonna have to parse this like we did the last one. So it gives the address components, which is one of the first things that it returns. And then the next thing is the formatted address. And it looks like we need the geometry. And the geometry is a dictionary of string any's, I guess they would be. Okay, so let's try doing it like this. So this is how I would do it myself, like piece by piece. So now location dictionary is this over-encompassing thing. What we need is the geometry. It's weird that it's not in parentheses. That worries me. Types isn't either. Place ID is. Okay, let's see if this works. If let geometry equals location dictionary. Geometry. I'll say this is going to be string any2. The way you figure out what these types are going to be, string any's is usually a safe bet. I see that it's a dictionary because it has multiple types of things. That's the location, which has a dictionary of latitude and longitude. It has a string type. It has a, it has multiple types. So I know that the first thing is going to be a string, or at least I hope this is considered a string. It seems to be. There's times when these JSON responses don't return quotations, but it's considered one anyway. Can't explain why it's sometimes like that. I think it's just how they format it on the API side. And then the any part is, I can't say for sure it's going to be a string on the right side, but it looks like it's always a string on the left. If let geometry there, let's just print that out for now as a test. So if nothing prints out, then it obviously failed and we didn't return anything. Otherwise, we should just get so now this one's coordinates, so I'm gonna leave that out for now. So we're not gonna get any weather on this run. So this is never gonna stop because we're not gonna get any weather. But we also didn't get a latitude, longitude back, which is unfortunate. Now, so what I'm not sure of is what this location is considered. The location that we saw in the request. One thing that I would do is, just to get a better view of what's going on, I'll just copy this into here. And then I think it was and key equals, draw my key. So if I make the same request in my web browser, maybe I'll be able to read it easier. And in this case, I can like in this case, yeah, geometry is a string, and then its type is of string any. That's what I put in. Is it not? Geo metry. Oh, so it looks like the first thing is results. Okay, I think that's the problem. So it looks like the results equals this. So you have to like go step by step, and then flat geometry equals results geometry string any. This is kind of like convoluted a little bit, but it's the only safe way to do it. And then technically at each step, I mean, at least while you're testing, you would just go like step by step and figure out like where your thing breaks. So in this case, I didn't scroll up enough when we were looking at it in the console, what our JSON response was. But it looks like the first level is results. So first you gotta unwrap this. And then from there, you have to grab geometry, and then from there you gotta get location. So right now I should actually print this whole bit. Computer's down. Did I hit play yet or not? I hope I didn't, because if I did, that means it didn't work. Load it up, and we got nothing back. Results. Looks like results. The difference is there's a curly bracket here, and then there's a square bracket there. I think results might be an array. An array of what though? String any's. This is a little weird. So sometimes you run into these little weird things. It seems to me like results might be an array, which I don't love, but it looks like it's an array of string any's. So those first square brackets, how you would say array, and then you would say what. So then from here, we'd have to get the first okay. This is gonna be weird if that's the reason, but and then wow guys. Wow. And then flat geometry. I'm gonna keep staying confident and like, you know, keep charging forward till it works. Because I have a feeling that was the problem. Something to pay attention to, whether this is optional chaining. We're saying if let this thing equal whatever type that we assume it to be, and if it doesn't work, then it fails out. So you have to be wary of what type it is that you expect. and usually it's dictionaries for JSON, but in this case it looks like you can receive multiple results. And we'll see if that was our problem right now. Okay, that was not our problem. Okay, so I'm gonna do something simple that'll work. I'm gonna print at each level when we get to there. And then we'll know where we stop. I don't want to actually print the results because it'll be hard to read, but I want to know where our logic failed. So if it gets into each block, then we made it. So we don't have to do it for there because we're not reaching there. And if we did, we would just print out the thing. At least we'll get something printing now. Are we not getting anything? Okay, that's a strange, unless I'm not using this at all. Oh, wow. Okay, this is embarrassing, but great. I forgot that I moved the location stuff to a separate block of code, so we never even have been searching. Now I have no idea if it was successful or not. The only way we could find out is if we just entered in an address. Wow. See if we can copy paste this. So it's search. And first results. Now, unless I backtrack, which I'm not going to do, we might have been okay that whole time, but obviously we got down to the geometry part, which is a relief. Like I said, embarrassing, but a relief in one way. And then let's delete all these print statements. And then it looks like what we're getting back is that whole thing. We're getting back this whole list of stuff, and all we want is this location. So now we can say that location equals geometry location as string any I know this is getting ridiculously nested, but and just for so we can keep that copied, print the location out. Build succeeded. It's installing. It's gonna load indefinitely. Let's not get fooled again. Print that out. We got our latitude, we got our longitude. Beautiful. Now in this case we can put them together. We can say lat equals location lat. And then you can just put it with a comma afterwards, say long equals location long. Careful with the spelling, they spell it LNG, which is a little weird. We have to specify what type it is because we didn't say it here. It looks like I guess we can call that a float or a double, but I'm just gonna say double as double and as double. Question mark says like, I'm not sure, is this a double? If it is, mercifully, I can add something to here and say coordinates. How can I do this? Let's say chords as a parameter. It's going to be a CL location coordinate 2D. That means it's going to expect that no matter what, which I can say equals CL location coordinate 2D. So I'll just like initialize one, and then if it's true, then I would say chords dot lat equals lat, chords dot long 2 equals long, and then we can do a completion, which will say true, nil for the error message, and then we need a reference because we're inside of a closure. And then we can say self.chords as the coordinates to pass back. Does that work? Complaining. I'm going to say throw that in front so we don't need to specify that it's the coordinates. This is going to return the chords either way. They're going to be 0. So what I'm thinking is, since we can just initialize it, I don't want to have a bunch of optional values. When this returns, if it's successful, then there's going to be some coordinates here, and then we can use, I guess we're going to have to do self probably, dot weather, dot get, should be weather with address. Oh, get current weather with coordinates. Get current weather, pass in the coordinates, chords. It's saying error type right now, but that is not to be worried about. And then when we get that back, we want to update the UI, which should work. Let's see if we get any build errors. I kind of did that pretty quickly. What's our error? Let's go check it out. Unresolved identifier. It's gonna probably say that I need to put self either way. Self. And chords are already typed in correctly. What does it want me to do? Okay. Simple spelling mistake, and then I forgot, since I'm inside this Alamo Fire closure, making the network request, I have to give it a explicit reference to which coordinates I'm talking about. So now, I don't know if I still have the address saved. No, I do not. Copy it. Paste it. Search. Looks like we got the weather for the area. That's great. I'm gonna leave it off on this. Next video, I promise we will get the location from the user itself rather than through text, but this is a good start already. And we're pretty much there. After we get the location from the user's phone itself, which we have to do by asking for permission and getting the information, and then doing this basically the same thing we're doing here without any typing. We're just gonna clean up this UI, maybe throw a background there for some color, and then as you can see, the app's pretty much done. If you like this video, please subscribe and like. I'll see you in the next one.